There were times where we just were checking in on him to see if he was alive. Literally.
Stone Temple Pilots' No.4, released on Atlantic Records, was recorded during 1998 and 99 at NRG Studios in Los Angeles, with the release of the album coming in October of 1999. Brendan O'Brien produced the record. He had done the 3 previous STP albums. And again, the band came up with something really good here, another great, solid album. But the problem with this one, it wasn't heavily promoted, and there are reasons for that. But first, we'll just take a quick detour on what exactly was going down at the time with the band. So, 96, the band released Tiny Music, but would only end up touring that record for about 6 weeks, and this was due to Scott's issues with substance abuse. It had begun back on their second record, Purple, where they were only able to tour that for like 3 or 4 months, due to those same reasons. So a sort of resentment was starting to build up towards their lead singer. And so this is where in 97 and 98 the band decided to take a bit of a break from one another. And this is where we get the 1997 Talk Show record. This was an album made by Dean, Robert, and Eric from STP, with a new lead singer, Dave Coots. And lead singer Scott Weiland would break off and do something of his own as well at this time, releasing his debut solo record, 12 Bar Blues, in 1998.
We just, like any band, you know, it's nothing out of the ordinary. Everyone needs to take a little break from each other, no matter what it is, you know.
Sometimes you can get a little impatient with one another's routine, shall we say.
But the band would come back together for the recording of No.4, the band's 4th album, aptly named. The first single to be released was the opening track from the album, Down. So the band released that and then went off to play a show in Las Vegas. It was an amazing show. Scott performed brilliantly. It went off. They filmed it. However, the very next day, the band had to accompany Scott to a courthouse in LA, and Weiland was off to serve a 1-year sentence, again for his substance abuse issues.
Because we left Vegas that night, we were at the LA County Courthouse the very next morning, bright and early, I think by 10 a.m., where we watched Scott be cuffed and taken away for a 1-year sentence on like his 2nd or 3rd bust or something. So it went from that, it went from having this record out to doing this great show and literally watching Scott being taken away. And Atlantic at that point said, this record's done. Let's just go work on something else. And Scott really went, we need to release Sour Girl.
And they did release Sour Girl as their 2nd single, and that was released in April of 2000. And as lead guitarist Dean DeLeo said in his own words, the release of that song really helped out that record. In fact, probably put it on the map.
We sort of, had that feeling about Sour Girl when we wrote it. We kind of knew that was like one of those sort of special songs.
Kind of an obvious one, yeah.
Yeah, and we basically decided to hold on to that, until I, was released from jail and the whole band could start firing on all cylinders again,
The release of the single was accompanied by a music video, which starred Scott Weiland and actress Sarah Michelle Gellar. The video featured little people that were dressed up like Teletubbies, which were big at the time. However, the band said that this was just a coincidence and the video was actually based off of a dream that Scott had. Many people thought it was based on Scott's current girlfriend and a woman he would later go on to marry, Mary Forsberg, but in fact it was based off of his first wife, Janina Castaneda. When he wrote the song, they were in the middle of their divorce, a divorce which took years to settle and, in Scott's own words, cost him a fortune. Scott talked about the song in his autobiography, Not Dead and Not For Sale, where he said this:
to go back to the album No.4, the touring that we did on No.4 was great, because that's when Scott got out of jail. He was completely sober. He finally been clean for months and months and months, and he was on fire.
So a bit of a sad and tragic thing that right at the release of the record, Scott had to go away to jail. He was set for a 1-year sentence. He was out in 6 months, so that was good. And he did. He got himself clean, really worked on himself, and when he got out, he was full-on dedicated to the band, ready to tour, and STP after that would play some really awesome live shows touring these songs.
Straight out, he was clean. He was fresh out of jail, and he was determined. Yeah, he felt like he had a lot of ground to make up.
I feel fantastic. You know, I'm incredibly full of gratitude to be able to be back, you know, to be freed.
No.4 is 11 tracks of STP hard rock, with songs like Down, Pruno, No Way Out, Sex and Violence. But mixed in there, you've got some amazing softer numbers as well, with the likes of Sour Girl, I Got You, and the beautiful Doors-esque Atlanta. Just the 2 singles were released from No.4, Down and Sour Girl, with Heaven and Hot Rods being released as a promotional single. But it was Sour Girl which was the big hit from the album. The song would enter the Billboard Hot 100, peaking at number 78, and it was the only STP song ever to enter the Billboard Hot 100. The cover art for the album was pretty simple, a white star on a black background, but it stirred up a bit of controversy because there was a band called Power Lloyd, and they had released their debut EP in 1998, and STP's cover was very similar to theirs, as you can see in these pictures. So representatives from the band Power Lloyd tried to contact STP's reps. However, the people from Stone Temple Pilots weren't having anything to do with it, until they were sent a cease and desist letter. STP's legal team then, quote, made an offer to settle that was unacceptable to us, said the lawyer who was representing Power Lloyd.
She lives in a bungalow, she kills me with rose garden thorns. She waits for me.
So, STP's No.4. While this is a really good album, and as the band says themselves, it really just suffered from a lack of promotion. They would release the album but couldn't tour behind it for the first 6 months of its release. And that's because, unfortunately, Scott had his issues there. I mean, he went to jail right upon the release of the record. So the band couldn't get out there and promote it, it just kind of sat there. But once Scott did get out of jail, as we've said already in this video, he was pumped, he was clean, he was fresh, played these songs live, and it just went off. And they are great songs on this album. The first track, Down, very awesome song, very heavy STP. Scott sings great on this entire record, as he always does on any record he performs on. Heaven and Hot Rods, very cool song. Pruno, probably on my top 3 from this record. Very awesome chorus with 1, 2, 3, I got another. Right, that thing kicks ass. Sour Girl, of course, we've talked about in this video. Big hit for STP off this one. Great song. No Way Out, another great heavy rock tune. Sex and Violence, great live. STP always did a really good live performance of that track. Glide, this may be like an underrated song. I really like this tune. One of the best songs off the album, actually. Again, in the top 3 or 4 easily off this record. And I'll come right down to the final track here from the album, Atlanta. As I said earlier, it is Doors-esque. Does definitely remind you of Jim Morrison a bit. Weiland often would channel Jim Morrison in some of his performances. But just really a beautiful, amazing song here. The musicianship, Dean DeLeo on guitars. Damn, That guy is a really amazing guitarist. His different chord styles and progressions, the way he plays, very talented guitarist. And the band sounds very good here. The album was definitely a turnaround from their previous with Tiny Music. Completely different, actually. This one was much more hard rock, had a harder edge to it. STP always like to diversify a bit from album to album, as a lot of bands do. But definitely a great STP record. You will not be disappointed with this one if you haven't heard it before. Some of the best STP songs they ever wrote you can find on this record, so a very cool album. Might be one of their most underrated ones, but as I say, some very good STP material on here. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Be sure to leave your memories from this record in the comment section. Thanks for checking out the video. We'll catch you next time.
She lives by the wall and waits by the door. She walks in the snow to me. She